Hi, I'm Doug Reeves at Creative Leadership Solutions, where we believe in evidence, passion, and results. Today I'm going to talk about how leaders and teachers influence student achievement. And it seems to me that it comes down to a very few things. Number one is time. If you're dissatisfied with student achievement, let's say reading scores or math scores aren't where you want them to be, then please don't tell me that this year's schedule is going to be the same as last year's schedule. If you've got a fourth grader reading at a second grade level, then the same amount of time won't do. If you've got a seventh grader who needs third grade math, then the same amount of time won't do. Time and again, you can change curriculum and assessments and technology, but if you don't give teachers the time it takes in order to make this up, then they'll never make up the lost ground that students need. It's not just elementary schools that this issue of time applies to. Some of the strongest elementary, middle, and high schools that I've seen use time as a variable, literally doubling the amount of time on English language arts and mathematics for sixth graders, for ninth graders. Yes, I know what that means is probably fewer electives, but here's an important insight. Fewer choices now means more choices for a lifetime. And giving kids electives in sixth grade and ninth grade that they then wind up flunking English language arts and math winds up restricting their choices later on. And so more time is a critical variable. But it's not just time, it's prioritization. The leadership and teaching decisions focus on not frantically covering every standard, but focusing on no more than about 6 or 7 key priorities. In a study of more than 2,000 schools, we found that those who focus on 6 or fewer priorities have dramatically better gains in achievement. And it's not just that, it's efficacy. One thing you'll find every researcher agreeing on is efficacy, the bone-deep belief that we influence the action. Now, the question is, how do you build efficacy? Not by bringing in the inspirational speaker to sing the efficacy song and do the efficacy dance. You build efficacy by asking this question: what causes student achievement? And if the answer is, hey, I'm just a potted plant here, all the factors are outside of my control, that's the absence of efficacy. But if the answer is a blend of, yes, home environment matters, and so do we, yes, parental involvement matters, and so does effective instruction and feedback and engagement and motivation, then we have a balanced view. Efficacy doesn't mean that home life is unimportant. Efficacy means that teachers understand that they and the leaders with whom they work influence student achievement to a very strong degree, and that's what the preponderance of the evidence says. It's also communication that is clear and jargon-free. Let me illustrate with an example. If I see one more kindergarten report card that tells parents about phonemic awareness, I will scream. We have to have very clear, unmistakable, student and parent accessible language when we report student achievement. And finally, you and I have an obligation as educators and leaders to challenge baloney when we see it. For example, I've been told in the last few months, Doug, writing is just so 20th century. You know, in the 21st century, kids will communicate by videos. And indeed, they will. But communicating by videos doesn't mean the absence of writing. Writing remains in the 21st century, thinking through the end of a pen. It is one of the best ways for students to organize their thoughts, explain how they have responded to text, build reading comprehension. Nonfiction writing in particular helps students in science, in social studies, in mathematics, as well as in reading comprehension. Writing remains one of the primary tools in our toolkit. Well, boys won't read books, I'm told. You know, girls will read, but boys have got to have interactive videos. The more violent, the better. Wait a minute. 2018 study by my colleague, Dr. Ray Reutzel, Dean of the College of Education at the University of Wyoming, and 8 colleagues did a profoundly important piece of work that had thousands of students interviewed, and boys will read if and only if the level is appropriate and the interest level is high. We can do this. Please don't throw in the towel on boys reading. Well, what about the feminine corollary of that? Well, bless her heart, she's on the honor roll. I'm choosing my language carefully here. You want to know an alarming statistic? The relationship of girls to boys in the National Honor Society for North America is 2 to 1. Schools where I've volunteered, it's been as high as 6 to 1, 8 to 1. Now, women, I'll stipulate you're smarter than us, but you're not 8 times smarter than we are. What we see here is a phenomenon of girls outgrading boys, but not necessarily outperforming boys. And if you're the father of daughters, as I am, this has profoundly negative consequences because girls get rewarded for being quiet and compliant and going along, and then they get thrust into a college, graduate school, or employment environment where they need to be leaders, but they've always been rewarded for being quiet, compliant, and getting along. Decide what you want your students and your own children to have. And finally, just Google it. You know, I was told in a London symposium, surgeons in the future will be able to avoid medical school because Google will tell them how to perform surgery. Not on this guy, it won't. It seems to me that Google can give us nothing more than hypotheses. And here is how I would recommend you use internet search technology. The first wave that students get of information is a hypothesis. Then they have incurred the obligation to find other things on the internet that support that first conclusion and other things that oppose the conclusion, and their obligation to you is to show who has the more persuasive evidence. Not just cutting and pasting, but being a critical consumer of what they find on the internet. So you and I have an obligation to call baloney when we see it. That's one of many things that we can do to influence student achievement right now. If you need keynotes, workshops, consulting and coaching, call Creative Leadership Solutions, where we make an impact on student learning.